Our program today, a conversation on neighborhood economic development, will be moderated by Meghan Harte, who's to my immediate right. Meghan is the...
What?
What'd she say? What did I miss?
I don't know.
The heckling has already started, so I appreciate that.
And our Sergeant of Arms isn't here today, so gosh, it's a lot of pressure on us. Okay. Meghan serves as the Executive Director of the Chicago Office of the Local Initiatives Support Corporation, LISC, a national leader in comprehensive community development. LISC's Chicago mission is to connect neighborhoods to the resources they need to become stronger and healthier. She has a professional staff of 15, an active real estate loan portfolio, an annual organizational budget of $8 million. She holds a BS degree. She's a Commodore from Vanderbilt University. I once interviewed there for a job in the history department.
And I'd never get in now.
Right. Hey, the University of Illinois, they wouldn't even open up my application today. She also has a JD from Loyola University School of Law, serves on the Chicago Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, on the Board of Special Children's Charities Chicago, and a volunteer coach at ABC Pilsen. Seated next to Meghan is Carlos Nelson, who... Bartow and Gunn, you better have your people, ready.
Hear that?
Carlos is the CEO, Executive Director of the Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation. He has grown that organization from a one-person operation in 2003 to a staff of nearly 30 full-time, part-time associates, over 100 volunteers, helping that organization carry out its mission of fostering and promoting the revitalization of all or parts of the underserved communities of Auburn, Gresham, Englewood, Greater Grand Crossing, Washington Heights, and West Chatham. Carlos holds a bachelor's degree from Tennessee State University in mechanical engineering and a master's degree in business administration from the Keller Graduate School of Management. To Carlos's right is Jeff Bartow. Jeff. All we need is Chicago Bulls music and stuff like that. Whatever. Jeff has been organizing in the Chicago metropolitan area since 1989. He spent 10 years organizing in Fort Worth, Texas. He's been a resident of the Southwest Side since 1992. He joined the Southwest Organizing Project, SWOP, as Executive Director in September of 2002. He has served as the Executive Director of the Interfaith Leadership Project of Cicero, Berwyn, and Stickney for nearly a decade. Thank you, Jeff. Last but not least, let's hear it for Perry Gunn. The Executive Director of Teamwork Englewood. Perry has served as the Executive Director of Teamwork Englewood since July of 2014. Teamwork Englewood, TWE, is a 15-year-old community-based organization created by LISC Chicago under the New Communities program to work with stakeholders to improve the quality of life in the community. And a lot of footnotes here. Perry holds a Master of Arts degree from Northeastern Illinois University, a Bachelor's of Science degree from George Williams College. He's a Fellow of Leadership Greater Chicago, Vice President of the National Black Child Development Institute, Chicago affiliate. So thank everyone for joining us today. Meghan, it's all yours.
Thank you and good afternoon. Thanks, Ed. I'd like to thank the City Club for the opportunity to come here and have a conversation with our neighborhood partners. So thank you for that. Nothing we do at LISC would happen without a team of people that I work with every day. So if the LISC staff team could stand up. Guys, come on. So they make the magic happen. They're out there in the neighborhood every day, working with our partners and trying to move the needle in a bunch of neighborhoods. So I appreciate them more than they know. So this is going to be a slightly different sort of presentation, so I'm actually going to ask for audience participation. So if you thought you weren't going to engage in this, sorry. But first, just by a show of hands, who has heard of LISC before or knows what we do? Okay, cool. So I'm going to skip that part of the presentation so that we can get to conversation. So that's like 47 slides. So I did want to talk a bit about the organizations who are here. So you heard about the individuals, but I just want to give a brief introduction on the organizations that they represent. So the first organization is the Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation, which works to foster and promote revitalization of low to moderate income communities and serving them using a comprehensive community development strategy. So what you'll hear about our organizations is they don't necessarily fit the mold of what you would think about as economic development, because they work in neighborhoods to address a variety of things that are in neighborhoods to move them forward. So they're unique in that way. But for Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation, they do serve in a range of capacities. One is community economic development, the other is real estate development. But they also do small business support, senior services, and educational initiatives. The next organization that Jeff represents is the Southwest Organizing Project, or SWAP. We all have an acronym. LISC is LISC. Doesn't roll off the tongue very well. SWAP is much easier. Is a broad-based community organization working to build power for families on Chicago's Southwest Side. SWAP has 37 member institutions, including local parishes, a large Muslim organization, a Jewish congregation, local schools, service organizations, a hospital, and a community development corporation. SWAP is known for its housing, education, anti-violence, immigration, and healthcare work. So pretty much everything. And then Teamwork Englewood was created in 2003 to unite the many organizations serving Englewood residents and work toward the common goal of building a stronger community. Teamwork is a capacity builder and a catalyst for positive community change, focused on safety, services to special needs populations, and the promotion of healthy lifestyles for all residents. So there's a common theme. The common theme is supporting folks that live in the neighborhoods that they work in every day, and that's the work that we do. So this is the participation piece. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a test, and you can feel free to yell it out whenever you want. So I'm going to show you some pictures, and I want you to try and guess the neighborhood. So I'm going to slowly show it. So this one is a bit of a giveaway if you know anything, all right? So yell it out. Englewood. But did you see some of the housing? Would you have expected that? If you haven't been to Englewood, would you have expected that based on some things you hear? So that's Englewood. What about this one? Yell it out whenever you feel like it. That's right, Chicago Lawn. This is the next one. Nope. Jefferson Park. All right, what about this one? Come on, anybody? It's Auburn Gresham. So kudos to you guys, which means that you all have been to these neighborhoods before, but a lot of folks in the city haven't been to these neighborhoods and would never know that Auburn Gresham has a lagoon or that Chicago Lawn has some amazing churches and other assets in the neighborhoods. So we think that's an important part of the conversation that we want to talk about today. That you couldn't necessarily recognize Jefferson Park in some of the neighborhoods that you might not recognize are on the south side and not on the north side, right? So here's another challenge. Neighborhood A and neighborhood B. So we picked out some statistics about two different neighborhoods. Ones that are typical for what a retailer or an investor would look at if they were thinking about a neighborhood to invest in. So neighborhood A, the first little ribbons, because you can't read it, but the top is number of 1 and 1+ rated neighborhood schools per square mile. So neighborhood A has 1.7, neighborhood B has less than 1 in a square mile, a top rated school. Housing density, which is another metric looked at on whether to invest in neighborhoods. Neighborhood A has 4,200 units per square mile. Neighborhood B has 4,600 units of housing per square mile. And the metric is close to, if you can get close to 5,000, that's a place you probably want to invest in. Walkability, a walk score. Neighborhood A has 77. Neighborhood B has a score of 72. Transit accessibility. Neighborhood A has 12 plus CTA bus lines, 2 metro lines, a CTA L line, and 1 major transit hub. Neighborhood B has 8 CTA bus lines, 2 metro lines, a CTA train line, and 1 major transit hub. They're both about 10 or 11 miles away from the loop, and they both have about the same amount of land dedicated to park space. So does anyone want to guess what in neighborhood A is and what neighborhood B is? You can yell it out. So which one do you think is Jefferson Park? B? You guys are right. But Jefferson Park gets a lot of retail investment, and it has viable commercial corridors. And Auburn Gresham has struggled on commercial corridors. So these stats weren't taken at random. They are the stats that corporations are said to look at when deciding where to locate a company facility or a retail outlet. So if the statistics are about the same, and in some cases, such as density, schools, walkability, better for communities like Auburn Gresham, the question we want to address today is, why isn't investment happening? And more important, what can we do to change that situation? And so in the work that we do, we work with our neighborhood partners. And so we came together, and many times the discussion about Chicago neighborhoods on the south and west sides particularly are centered on deficits. So LISC and our partners, we reject that narrative. So what we're going to be talking about today is the positives. What are the aspects of these communities that are similar to other communities that are receiving investment? What you'll hear about today is a collaboration across neighborhoods to create a model for investment, for economic development that focuses on people and place. At the same time, to attract investment in already strong, vibrant neighborhoods. So this is what we're calling the Southwest Corridor Collaborative. And through our work in neighborhoods and with our partners, it's become clear that a cogent strategy to attract economic investment is needed in certain parts of the city. Because after government and institutions have invested, it's obvious that the market is still not coming. There has been significant government and institutional investment in these neighborhoods, and the market's still not coming. So we looked at a broad range of the city, generally the southwest side. So that green and orange colored area is the geography larger than Boston, and it represents a population larger than Milwaukee. So the strategy takes a sub-regional approach, obviously for a couple reasons. It's pretty big. But mainly because neighborhoods cannot compete alone in the regional or global economy if they plan within their own boundaries. And so it's looking across neighborhoods on how that work could come together to drive investment. Contiguous neighborhoods can't compete against each other. So these guys could compete all day against each other, but the resources are going to be split up, and it's probably not going to get to a better end. A collaboration can maximize common and unique attributes of each of the neighborhoods. They have some very common issues that are benefits, and then they have unique attributes that they could build off of for each other. And it's the best way to prioritize resources. So for a first question, when we sat down to talk about what would an economic development plan look like, we heard some pretty good and specific feedback. So Jeff and Perry, if you could talk about what you thought about when we first talked.
Well, I know when we first heard about it, our thought was we've spent the last 5 years doing a lot of work building back, and we're still doing it, what was broken in the residential part of the neighborhood. We saw this as a great opportunity to begin to bring jobs, bring commercial, light industrial development back into our community. We were also attracted by the idea that we would be deliberate about connecting with West Englewood, Auburn Gresham. There's just a bridge underneath, and there are shopping opportunities both ways in our communities, and it goes along with the kind of work that SWAP and Teamwork Englewood have been doing together for years in terms of being deliberate about building real relationships across the south and southwest sides. Those were our thoughts.
And for Englewood, we thought about helping local entrepreneurs, getting them opportunities to be a part of the equation. We looked at attraction of new businesses in the Englewood community as a priority for our neighborhood. And we also looked at livable wage jobs. That was important to us for the Englewood neighborhood.
So, Megan, if you don't mind, I'd like to turn the page back to the sheet with the statistics, Auburn Gresham versus Jefferson Park. And this information does not surprise me at all. You know, we're talking about, in Auburn Gresham, we're talking about, and generally in the three contiguous communities, we're talking about a densely populated bungalow belt district with very strong housing stock, rows and rows of brick bungalows, brick two flats, bookend apartment buildings for local investors to own. You know, we're talking about a community that has focused on youth development and educational attainment, really focusing on pre-K through third graders. The Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation has staff in 6 local community schools promoting math and reading literacy, promoting access to health care, after-school enrichment programs, and all the while we're working with the parents of those youth, working with them on workforce development and financial supports. We call this our Auburn Gresham Go 2-generation strategy. Now, it doesn't surprise me because we're talking about a community with great transportation options. The Red Line station at 79th Street, the CTA bus lines, including the busiest bus line in the entire city of Chicago, and a planned and hopefully soon to be built Metro Rock Island station at 79th as well. Now, mind you, I'm not synchronized with the slides, so we'll keep going though.
I'm keeping up.
All right, you're keeping up. And if you could put up the notable features slide just for a moment.
Carlos,
Yeah,
okay.
no, I'm making this difficult. So one thing that we do have, and this is a tough slide for you guys to digest, but I'll just mention, you know, we've got 2 business improvement districts. So those are the yellow lines, or SSAs as they're called here in Chicago. We've got 2 TIFs, both the 79th Street Corridor TIF and the 79th and Vincennes Corridor TIF. And we're also talking about an area that has the micro market recovery program focused, embedded right in there. So those numbers, those stats don't surprise me because in our community, we're talking about a community of residents and organizations who have tenacity, who continue to work to address the legacy of the phenomenon of white flight. So if you give me a second just to describe what that means for our community. So from the mid-1960s to early 1980s, the population shifted from 60,000 people, 99% white, to 62,000 people, 98% African American. And unlike many other communities in the area that experienced this ethnic succession, Auburn Gresham's housing stock remained strong. But as Meghan pointed out, our commercial corridor was decimated. 79th Street, Halsted, Racine, Ashland, we were left with derelict buildings, with vacant lots, and with mixed-use buildings that were in disrepair. So imagine a hulking, 4-story, 60,000 square foot building with beautiful terracotta sitting ominously vacant at an intersection where 3 CTA bus lines converge. Imagine that in another community. Well, that's what we have at 79th, near 79th and Halsted, and that's one of the projects that the organization and the community has come together to renovate and to bring life to the community and bring 100 plus living wage jobs.
Go ahead, Barry.
So in Englewood, so for the Englewood community, we have a lot of access too. We have a new school coming in 2019. We're glad that that's coming to the community. We have a great transportation system as well. We have access to the red line, the green line, a lot of bus routes. But what's different about Englewood right now is that things are changing very positively for our community. A lot of times there's been a bad rap about Englewood and all the negative things about what goes on in Englewood, and the people are apathetic and so forth. But the reality is that Englewood is rising again. And Englewood is rising because things are changing for the better. Let me give you a few examples. In 2016 compared to 2017, homicides in Englewood are down 45%.
All right.
Crime is down dramatically. Shootings are also down 44%. But this is just not happening because the community is not working together. The community is working together aggressively. Our Englewood Quality of Life Public Safety Task Force is working with the police very closely to help make these kind of things happen. So it's just not happening by itself. But in addition to that, you know, Englewood got a Whole Foods last year. And the fact that Englewood has a Whole Foods brought 200 new jobs to our community. 40 local suppliers on the shelves at Whole Foods. Now, we're not there yet. Whole Foods is just kind of rounding first base.
Yep.
But Starbucks and Chipotle are at third base. And they're ready to go home. And so these businesses are doing well. No longer can crime be the deterrent to keep businesses away from the Englewood community. There's a lot of good going on in Englewood, and we just got to now take notice that the people in Englewood are working closely together to change the narrative and to change the reality of what is really happening in our community. Englewood is a vibrant place today, and we're going to continue to work to make it happen.
I want to pick up a theme that Perry laid out about people working together. But first, I believe it was August 5th, 1966, that Dr. Martin Luther King marched into Chicago Lawn. It was called the Marquette Park neighborhood at that point. He came to the corner of California and Marquette Road. And he said that he had never seen such hatred. The neighborhood at that point was primarily a white ethnic community. Today's Marquette Park could be no more different than that. The contrast is enormous. Today, it's a mixed African American Latino community, and there has been 20 years of deliberate work among residents who are active in local institutions to build something real and substantial between one another. And it's created a platform for a lot of remarkable things. 13 of the 19 schools in zip code 60629 are level 1 or 1 plus. There are over 140, mostly moms, working in those schools every day in classrooms assisting as parent mentors, which contributes to those kinds of outcome numbers. Housing stock, like Carlos said, is Harte bungalow belt housing. It's very affordable. In 2008, the neighborhood was broken on the eastern end by the recession, by the foreclosure crisis. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but we've worked hard to build it back, and it's well underway, but there's still more to do. There are enormous development opportunities, commercial development opportunities along 63rd Street. That's the positive side of the deterioration of that street. But what's the expression? Retail follows residential. A lot of work has been done to build that back. There's also a large stretch of land at 62nd and Western that's ripe for development, and we're taking a look at possibilities there as well.
So I think one of the things that we talked about, if we wanted to work together and really drive resources, what would that look like? And we came around to sort of 3 key areas, and it's across the people and places. The first is driving investment, employment, livable wage investment. So the thing we've set as our goal across the 3-4 neighborhoods is 750 living wage jobs and investment by employers to come into the neighborhood with 750 living wage jobs. The second piece was really looking at the population and what could we do to support them to actually be able to take advantage of some of those jobs. And really looking at some of the employment challenges and the opportunities of the population that lives in that core area where you saw on the map in orange, and really trying to drive 3,000 people into employment. So lifting people up as we invest in place. And then the third was, again, along the lines of wealth building and looking at small businesses and supporting 200 small businesses, existing or new, into a pipeline of support so that they could expand and take advantage of investment that would come. So it's a 3-pronged approach that we did. And what we wanted to talk a little bit more today about was some of the key areas where we think there's opportunity for employer investment in the neighborhoods, and really trying to be smart about each of the communities and what they contributed and the attributes they had to drive industry and what that would look like, and not be greedy. So if we could pick 3 priorities and we could drive everybody to focus on those and build out from there, then that would create a ripple effect across neighborhoods. So I'm gonna, because Carlos got me off on the plan, which is fine, sort of. So this is sort of where it looks like. The gray line going up north and south on the map is the Dan Ryan, I think, yeah. And so there are 3 key areas, 79th and Vincennes, 63rd and Halsted. 79th and Vincennes is a little bit broader as we started working with our planners, and then 62nd and Western, which is what Jeff talked about. So what I'd like to do, starting with whoever comes up first, which I think is Jeff, the attributes that you have built off of and where you see the opportunity for investment, and specific around 62nd and Western, what the community is thinking about.
Well,
what do you want me to get?
what the community is looking to do is we've been holding a lot of meetings to identify what people would like to see there. And we've identified everything from the notion of building in one part of the area recreational space for soccer. Along the front, the idea is to do retail. And then we've been hoping for some kind of light industrial along the back, which abuts the CSX rail tracks.
And why do you think it's primed for investment now?
It's primed for investment because there's an empty Sears, there's a Jewel that's no longer in the neighborhood, and there's been a significant increase in housing density as we've built back over the last few years. I think I should just go ahead and lay a little bit of that out. We took a 20 square block area where there were 93 vacant and abandoned properties. And there are actually 3 key partners in the room I'd like to acknowledge. One is United Power for Action and Justice, another is Brenshore Development, and a third is Neighborhood Housing Services. We've all worked together to create demand for that community, to acquire and rehab 14 buildings, 47 units. We worked with another 22 local contractors who collectively developed another 55 units, and we've gone from 93 vacant and abandoned addresses to 13 in that area. It's a holistic and strategic effort. It wasn't about housing. It was about what families need to live well in a neighborhood. We talked about improving outcomes in schools. The other concern is with violence. Violence is down 55% in that area since we started the effort, and 33% in the neighborhoods we're about to move into. So we began to build off of those 20 blocks about a year ago now. We're moving to the east between, our target area is between, the first area is between Rockwell and California. The second phase is east to western, and then south of 63rd to 71st east of California. We think those results are an indication that there is a will on the ground to make this neighborhood work. What we need now is real investment.
Thanks. Perry, what about your key area?
So our key area is definitely the corners of 63rd and Halsted, where the new Whole Foods has come in, located near Kennedy King College. That's really our commercial point. And for us, we want to build off of what started at Whole Foods and develop the second phase of Englewood Square, a new shopping development that's located at 63rd and Halsted. There's about 5.5 acres behind Whole Foods that we're looking to develop next year, in the next year or so. And so we have lots of interest for that space. We're also looking to do mixed-use residential and mixed development from housing to commercial development near that corner. So at this point, 63rd and Halsted is our key commercial district. And for those of you who don't know, back in the day, it had 250 retailers in that area, the second busiest commercial district in the city of Chicago. We may not get back to that point, but we're going to get to a good point as we move forward. And so that's what we're looking to do near the corners of 63rd and Halsted. It's just a vibrant place right now, a lot of energy, a lot of positive activity. We think that area can be an economic engine for the Englewood neighborhood.
And Carlos, I think the situation of Auburn Gresham and its proximity to the expressway gives a little bit of a different opportunity, or a broader opportunity across the landscape. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the opportunity is both on the local level and also on the regional opportunities or impact regionally. You know, one of the common threads of our organizations, it really starts with community engagement. And for us, you know, we're talking about, as I mentioned, 79th Street, the busiest bus line. You know, we decided we need to get people to come to Auburn Gresham, come to 79th Street and see for themselves. And how would we do that? Well, we said, hey, let's do a community festival. We called it the 79th Street Renaissance Festival. We plopped it down right in the middle of 79th Street, a quarter-of-a mile stretch. And we said, hey, come on out, celebrate the community, celebrate the ability to live, work, and play safely, and promote business development in our community. People across the city, across the region, thought we were nuts. They would never come to a street festival in the middle of 79th Street, and this will be our 13th year. We had 23,000 people. So we have 23,000 people last year that came to this two-day event now to see the beautiful assets that I described earlier. I also want to take a step back, and if you guys can join me on this kind of visit to how things used to be. Because as a kid, and Deborah Moore's out there, she remembers these days, I have a fond memory of the, I don't know where Deborah is, but I have a fond memory of the vibrancy near the 79th and Halsted intersection. There was the Frank's department store. Anybody know Frank's department store? When I was little, I thought that was the biggest, most glorious store in the world. It had this beautiful atrium that led up to Frank's department store, right at the intersection of 79th and Halsted. There was the old Walgreens building that was built in 1926, one of the first Walgreens building. That too had terracotta facade. It was a 3-story, 50,000 square foot building. It had a large breakfast counter, and when you stepped on this plate, the arm would swing open. Anyone remember that? I'm showing my age here. My mother-in-law actually worked in a doctor's office on the 3rd floor. That building, because of the neglect, began to collapse about 8 years ago. There was the old Capitol Theater in the 7900 block of Halsted. That's where I saw the Jackson 5 perform when they were still out of Gary, Indiana.
Okay,
That was
come
a
on
long
now.
time ago. I know.
Get to the second millennium.
And then there was the Rusnick Brothers Furniture Showroom and Warehouse right next to Leo High School at 839 West 79th Street, which is the building, and if you don't mind going to that slide again.
I got you.
Which is the building that the community and the GAGDC as the community developer have acquired. We need your help. We're bringing it back to life. We're lighting up the community and investment in the area. And as I mentioned, 100 plus living wage jobs. That's just one of the catalytic projects and nodes in the Auburn-Gresham Southwest Corridor. So we've got dense population. We've got exceptional transportation. We have very strong buying power as a community. We have large potential workforce and a network of committed community-based organizations working together, supported by many of you here, to really shift the paradigm. The Auburn-Gresham Healthy Lifestyle Building at 839 West 79th is the initial catalytic project. There are other opportunities, as Meghan mentioned. 79th and Vincennes has humongous opportunities for a developer to come in, and it would have regional impact. And that's just 3 blocks from I-94. And recently, a development group called Green Era, and Jason, are you here, Green Era? Hi, okay, Green Era plans to develop an anaerobic digester. I need everyone to make a note, anaerobic digester near the corridor in an old Brownsfield, bringing green jobs, and it's in line with our healthy living focus. But Jeff, Perry, we need more. We need more.
So Jeff, if density is coming back in parts, won't retail and other investments follow? And is it?
Yeah, to some extent, but the reality is, actually I want to go back to Marquette Park for a second. 2 years ago in the summer at the corner of Marquette Road and Kedzie, one of our member organizations led all of us in imagining and making real a memorial to the legacy of Dr. King. And if you go there, and I urge you to do so, because I come away with 2 feelings. One of the feelings is a sense of peace, but the other one that is equally strong is a sense of urgency. The time is now.
Yes.
We've built the platforms in our communities to do real work that makes substantial differences. What we need now are partners. We have the will to make it happen. Let's do it.
Perry?
So I'm not an ordained minister, but the doors of Englewood are open. The doors of Auburn-Gresham are open.
Yes.
And the doors of Chicago-Lawn are open. We just invite you to join us. Be a part of this game with us. Join us like Chicago Cares does, bringing volunteers into our neighborhood. Join us like the McCormick Foundation does to bring dollars into our community. Buy a house in Englewood,
Yes.
or Chicago Lawn or Auburn Gresham. Locate a satellite office. We want all of it in our communities. So we just invite you to join us. And again, my invitation is that the doors of our communities are open. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay, first of all, terrific panel, isn't it? Tremendous moderator. She had them all do their homework. You know,
Yeah.
this was very well, really smooth. Terrific. Okay. This question is from City Club member Samantha Lou. Samantha, are you with us right now? Back towards the rear. Okay. She's with the University of Chicago, so you know this will not be a simple question. What role can an academic health and social sciences research center play in facilitating neighborhood economic development in Chicago?
Yeah,
Carlos,
yes,
you're
I'd
up
love
to
to take
bat.
that. So the whole notion of campus community partnerships is vital. One thing that I've learned, we've partnered with many campuses over the years, is that the principal investigator doesn't always have to be the university. The PI can also be the community-based organization, and we can recruit the university, the college or university, to do the research with us. And so, I mean, I think that's a nuance that many of our community-based organizations don't consider. These guys are experts. They can be the principal investigator and recruit a Northwestern or University of Chicago or UIC or UI Health, et cetera, to support the research project in our communities, led by our community partners.
Okay, we've got several other questions. This is from, I think it's Ethan Foreman? Gian Foreman, I apologize. As I look around the room, I see many familiar faces. How do we tell this story to those who have the ability to invest, rather than preaching to the choir? Reverend Gunn, you want to?
No, I'd actually like to jump in. Then Reverend Gunn. So I think I look around the room and it is a lot of familiar faces and a lot of believers. But what are you doing outside of this room? Where are you taking that message? Are you going home and not saying anything to anybody? It's amazing where opportunities will come up. If you continue to talk about these neighborhoods, if you continue to spend time in them, then talk about it to your friends, to your family, to your network. You never know where an opportunity is going to come through. And I think that's on all of us to do it, and then to organize collectively to get messages to others with resources.
Megan, the only thing I would add is there's skin in the game in the neighborhoods. In our neighborhood alone, over the past 5 years, organizations and institutions have either raised or leveraged $100 million.
Yeah.
That's true of each of our neighborhoods to different numerical extent. That's a great start, and that means there can be real give and take and real partnership.
I think when you look at trying to make change and positive change, it's good to start inside the family, with the family, to create that message. So that's why we're starting here, and we're going to take this on the road.
And
Okay.
it's about positive, it's not about deficits. So if we're talking about the neighborhoods, let's not talk about the deficits about them. There are challenges everywhere, but there's a lot of positives, and that message isn't being told about these neighborhoods. And in a lot of times, it's not being told by us.
Right.
Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. This is from Bobby Zabel with Know Your Chicago. Bobby, where are you? Okay, I see you back there. I understand that Englewood residents contributed thousands of dollars to a fund for community improvement. This could probably apply to all of our speakers here. Can you speak to how you energize and engage residents and how this leverage to attract outside investment? How do you ensure the residents' needs come first?
So in Englewood, last year, we started a quality of life fund for our community. And it was started because our residents wanted to have some skin in the game. So on Giving Tuesday, we created a Giving Tuesday campaign to support the projects and the programs that we were doing in our community. And we got a couple donors to match some of the giving that the residents did, and we were able to raise $50,000 that we're going to be giving away in the next couple weeks to local programs that's working on projects to improve our neighborhood. So for us, you ensure the involvement of residents by putting skin in the game and then putting them as leaders to oversee the funds.
Okay, Gephart Carlos, would you like to chime in on that one?
Yeah, at SWAP, the work starts and is sustained by face-to-face conversations at one-to-one and small group levels that happen to the tune of thousands of individual meetings and small group meetings a year. That's not an exaggeration. There are ad hoc teams that work on each of the issue areas, and the people who are directly impacted by the issue shape the solutions. When you live on a block where there are 15 to 20 vacant addresses, you're willing to take a risk in terms of breaking through with another human being who may not look like you, who may worship in a different house of worship, who may be of a different generation. But people are serious about common ground, and you don't have to scratch very deep to find that will.
Carlos?
Yeah, I just want to mention, so seniors, Auburn Gresham has a very significant senior population. Those are the African Americans that moved in during the ethnic succession. Those seniors are still very active. We've got a small accessible repairs for seniors program through the city's Department of Planning and Development. And the seniors, as we began our capital campaign for the 839 project, wanted to give back. And they were asking, how can we give back to purchase this building? The community sees that catalytic project as their own. And so the seniors suggested purchasing bricks. So commemorative bricks will be in the lobby of the 839 building with the names of the Mrs. Joneses and Smiths and Washingtons of the community, because they really wanted to have a stake in this project. So that's an example as well.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one last question, but I've just been informed by Meghan that we have several other questions. We're not going to be able to get to them, but I think that Meghan and the panelists would be glad to talk with you about some of your questions. So let's deal with the last official question, we might call it. Harry Alston with the Safer Foundation. The question is, can you provide 2 or 3 concrete strategies to balance neighborhood economic development and the empowerment of current community residents and families? Who would like to? Carlos, we're going to start with Auburn Gresham.
So I would say, build from within. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a pretty significant number of a workforce that, if developed, can do some great things in our community. And so Safer Foundation is a terrific example, terrific partner. And I shouldn't have started that, because the CARE program is, as well as many others in the room. But so utilizing the talents from within the community, where if it's an architect like a Dion Lucas that lives nearby, if there's an individual that has an entrepreneurial spirit that wants to launch a business in the community. And I think that's sustainable. That's the beginning of sustaining our growth in our community.
Yeah, and I would say that Dion, where is Dion? Raise your hand. So Dion,
Right here.
he lives in the community, and he's the planner for the Englewood work that we're doing. So it's looking for local talent and raising them up or supporting them in the work that we're doing. That's obviously work that LISC does every day. I think the other concrete example, maybe Perry, you could talk about it, you touched on it a bit, is the Englewood Whole Foods. I mean, one of the reasons it is successful is because the neighborhood and the folks in the neighborhood benefited from it, whether it's jobs or small business. You want to?
Yes, in addition to that, we also had a local business plan competition providing opportunities for our entrepreneurs to win real dollars to establish businesses within the community. That's a real example of giving local folks a chance to pursue their dreams.
Okay, the City Club would like to thank Meghan Harte, Carlos Nelson, Jeff Bartow, Perry Gunn for bringing this program to us. Let's give them a big round of applause.